So why don't we start with each of the panelists introducing their name and the institution that they represent, so everyone knows who we're speaking to, because there's been a change from the printed agenda. Starting with Salmaan, please.
Good afternoon. Wow, you guys know how to do conferences. Congratulations on an incredible turnout, first of all. My name is Salmaan Jaffery, and I am the Chief Business Development Officer at the Dubai International Financial Center. Very happy to be here.
Good afternoon. My name is Augusto Cardenas. I'm the Head of International Operations at Abu Dhabi Investment Office. As our Director General mentioned before, we have offices around the world. We are very proud to have our first office here in Tel Aviv. We have 7 more offices around the world. And I'm really excited, very happy to be here to honor the partnership that was mentioned before. So thank you for having me here.
And I'm Yasser Biaz. I'm the CEO of UM6B Ventures, which is a VC ventures firm, a early stage ventures firm out of UM6B, University Mohammed VI Polytechnic in Morocco. Happy to be here and happy to share the floor here with you.
Thank you. So Salmaan, let's start with you, looking at the macro picture. With increasing global tensions and a smaller and decreasing global trade, what does this mean for the Abraham Accords countries?
Well, thanks, Sabah, for that one. A bit of context. So the DIFC is a financial center. We've been around for 18 years. And what that means is that we're no stranger, given where we are, to geopolitical and macro stress. So I think the answer to your question this time around is probably manifest in 3 trends. One is around talent, the second is around capital, and third is around markets. When it comes to talent, what we're seeing is an unprecedented structural change in terms of COVID breaking the link between what people do and where they do it. And when you have societies and economies like in Israel or in UAE and Dubai, highly vaccinated, ready to go, that created the conditions for movement of talent away from traditional markets into markets like Dubai and the UAE. So that's been that's been a very important trend. It's manifested itself in technology and in financial services and in hedge funds. The second piece is that owing to these geopolitical, economic, and of course COVID-related changes, there's a structural move of private capital, whether it's ultra-high net worth capital, whether it's institutional capital, and we at the DIFC in Dubai are playing a role to continue to institutionalize those movements of capital. And that's been very interesting for us as a market in the UAE. And third, last but not least, is the issue of markets. And by markets, I mean essentially capital markets in our region, whether it's Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or Saudi Arabia. Great promise, yet unfulfilled, but increasing with time. If you're interested in deploying capital into the Middle East, there's a 3 to 5 year story of taking gem companies public, selling companies to the public, and we think that that's a long-term opportunity. So net, those are the 3 things that we're seeing in the wake of some of the market and macro changes.
Thank you. So Augusto, can you give us your perspective from the Abu Dhabi Investment Office view on everybody thinks of the Gulf as capital access. What else can the Gulf provide?
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you for that. And of course, there is, due to the current scenario that we were talking about, there is unprecedented demand for the funds, especially in the Gulf, because the Gulf is one of the few regions in the world that is behaving positively and is abundant in capital, right? But I think it's beyond that. It's because the leadership has activated the right policies to build an ecosystem for the companies to be global, to be competitive globally. And we witnessed that maybe 2 months ago in Abu Dhabi Finance Week, when thousands of asset managers, private equity funds, venture capitals flew in. Honestly, we felt that the island sank a little bit. But I think what it really reflected was the positive, was the raising of this falcon economy. And let me explain you a little bit about this concept of the falcon economy. I think what the companies are looking for is an ecosystem that allows them to operate domestically, but also internationally. And this ecosystem should have at least 4 factors. It should be a stable economy, because what the war has taught us is that we can expect international shocks at any moment. It needs to have the right infrastructure. It needs to have the talent pool and the conditions to retain that talent pool. And finally, of course, a business environment to operate. And I think Abu Dhabi has these 4 conditions. And let me go very quickly among those 4 factors. The first one, strong and stable economy. Yes, the GDP of the UAE is around $270 billion. Abu Dhabi represents 60% of that. But it's more important the behavior. Last week, we received the news that the Abu Dhabi economy is growing at a rate of 10.5%, which is a massive number in the current scenario. So it's an unstable economy, but it's a strong economy too. It has a top-notch infrastructure, not only hard infrastructure with 11 international ports operating, Khalifa Port being on the top 5 most efficient ports in the world, but also soft infrastructure. The government of Abu Dhabi has heavily invested in ICT infrastructure. And nowadays, Abu Dhabi has one of the fastest, if not the fastest, internet broadband connections of the world. And the third factor, my friend Salmaan already mentioned before, is the talent. Abu Dhabi hosts more than 200 nationalities. But more than that is the conditions. We have a great quality of life. And you have all the rankings to say so. You have the safest city of the world, one of the happiest cities of the world. But I think what really matters is the thousands and thousands of testimonials of people that have lived around the world. And once they settle down in Abu Dhabi, they probably call it second home. So for me, and the last point, which is very important, is a government that has understood that the success of the companies is the success of the Emirates. And therefore, ADIO exists. And as our Director General was mentioned before, we are here to help you out. We are here to build partnerships in the long term. And we are here to show you why Abu Dhabi is the capital of capital. So, yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to you, Yasser. Having started off at UM6P, the leading university in Morocco, and now spinning off venture capital, I'd like you to give us an idea about Morocco, both from the innovation angle, and then how would you expect, or how would a successful Israeli entrepreneur approach you, having already invested in 2 Israeli companies in the best way?
Certainly. Thank you so much. So yes, I mean, for context, I mean, obviously we have essentially a spin out of a university, so we have access to, we have a particular pathway that puts us in this place. We're managing 2 funds, one for digital transformation, which is the mainstream kind of investment model that is pushed across Africa, for instance. So that's all linked to platform businesses, e-commerce, fintech, logistics, and so forth. So we invest in that realm, and our mission is to create an ecosystem, an early stage ecosystem, driving to a solid Series A. So we have incubators, accelerators internally, and we call that layer, programs layer. But also we work with other investors such as business angels and VCs to reinforce the capital layer. And so that makes up for digital transformation. It's not massively technology driven, it's low tech a little bit. It is taking advantage of the transition from old paradigms into digital. But the magic that we have is in deep tech. And so obviously a lot of people will ask, like, what's the difference between deep tech and the rest? So anyways, for us, deep tech at least covers the domains of security and sovereignty. I mean, obviously we have gone through several crises, energy, health, pandemic, drought, climate problems. And so that's the areas of focus for us. And those are agriculture and food system, health, water, energy, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. And so the particularity of deep tech in Africa is that it does not have access to the same grant and subsidy system to push for innovation. Our responsibility is to take projects from research institutions in our university and partners universities across Africa and make those projects an investable asset. It's already staged that these projects have not matured enough to be available, or at least be accessible via incubators and accelerators, they're still entangled within the institutions. So the IP is there, the professors are there, and the mechanics are being essentially put in place for technology transfer. So our universities is actually a leader in the region in terms of technology transfer. But that is not enough. You have to be able to reassure investors and essentially help them with the transition of the project into becoming invested. So generally, we have to de-risk the asset. In the US, because we have invested in the US and we have also 2 Israeli startups, in that particular case, there's a subsidy system. When you invest, the Israeli Innovation Authority would provide some of that subsidy. When we invest in the US, there is also subsidy from the National Science Foundation and SPEAR. But those mechanics are not available in Africa. And so we're using the university system, the research ecosystem, to de-risk that. So let me just give you a number to essentially, give at least, some numbers for, more weight. So say, for example, you invest $300,000, and that was the case for us in Israel, in a startup, or in the US. Then you will get another $1 million to essentially de-risk. So that's $300,000 out of 1.3 million. So the burden on the investor is of 25%. But if we invite investors to come invest in deep tech in Africa, we're asking them to assume the 100% burden of it. So the way we tackle that is essentially try to relieve the founders from those cost points by, for example, hiring PhDs, postdocs, finding the appropriate experts. We have thousands of them, across the continent and, internationally, but also infrastructure. Our university prides itself with state-of-the-art equipment and talent. And so at least that gives us ground to support the startups. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're running short on time, so we'll do short questions here. I'd like to hear from each one of you, briefly, 30 seconds, what you've seen in terms of Israeli companies, you don't have to name them, having had the best approach to each one of you. What made them stand out? We'll start with Salmaan.
Yeah, so a quick thing. I think the Dubai proposition story is pretty well known. What you may not know is that the DIFC has an ecosystem of 35,000 people, 4,400 companies. And that's an important component piece in terms of our work with Israeli firms. I actually would love to talk about the firms that are there. There are many, but a few that come to mind are firms like Theta Ray, which is Mark Aziz's company. Mark, I don't know where he is.
What exactly about Theta Ray? What was the approach that?
Yeah, so similarly, whether it's Theta Ray being our first or a company as large as Rapid, there's 2 things. One is access to specific markets with a proposition that is relevant for the region, right? So I like the expression that His Excellency used of moving east. Relevant problems for emerging markets. Theta Ray invested in relationships, brought AI, cutting-edge AI to the market where there wasn't there, and rather than focus on public MOUs, focused on commercial contracts. That's what made them successful.
Thank you.
I would like to also rephrase the sentence before, and I would like to also let you a message here, and I will tackle your question. But I think that the Abraham Accords is not just a tool to access an additional market. I think it has been a platform, and you said it at the beginning. We have learned these 2 years, or a little bit more than that, novel ways of working. And it's a platform to attend an entire new market for you. And what is that new market for you? The new market is the network of free trade agreements that the UAE has signed. We have free trade agreements with India, with Indonesia, with the GCC war. So the invitation to the companies, and basically to answer your question, what we are looking for as this Falcon economy that is rising up is to have the long-term vision. We like to have partners that would like to attend a market of 1.8 billion people, right? That is the invitation, and this is the market that we like to suggest. So we want the Israeli companies to start to look at that market instead to go into the traditional markets that they have gone before.
Yeah, so our main kind of philosophy about developing deep tech innovation and so forth in Africa is that outside of the digital transformation market, if we're talking about deep tech, we should not be just sole investors. Capacity and capability have to be built. And so that's why each of our investments are very intentional, and they seek to demonstrate a particular, hypothesis, meaning, do we have enough PhDs? Do we need to train them? So how can we use the investment as a vehicle to train, 10 PhDs in biotech, so many postdoc in another area, and also develop and expertise in technology transfer? What type of equipment, especially when we're working on biotech and more advanced technologies, we need,
So basically, I think the message is partnerships.
Yes.
We've run out of time. I'd like to add just as my closing remark, I think doing business one way or the other is just the beginning. What I look forward to in 5 years' time is where we have Israeli entrepreneurs and Arab entrepreneurs working together on the same startup. That, I think, will be the full potential of the Abraham Accords. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists.